Ta-da! Hi guys, welcome to the Rusty Beauty's garage and to our... Oh, these are heavy actually. Welcome to our 1976 TR6 project in the Rusty Beauty's garage. In the last episode I did a lot of talking and very little working, and I'm assuming this one is coming shortly after that one, so I'm not gonna talk too much about what has been done on the car so far. I'm just gonna jump straight ahead into our CV joint conversion here from GoodParts. I was planning initially to include this in my previous video because I was expecting that I was gonna be just shoving them in and bolting them in place, the CV axles. Turns out that it is a lot more complicated than what I thought it was. I mean, the process is straightforward, but there's lots of checks that need to be done and measurements and tolerances and stuff like that. So without further ado, let's get crack-a-lacking and I'll show you the entire process. Oh, what a beauty. Rusty beauty. Specifically for rusty beauties. Why is this assembled backwards? This hub needs to be the other way around. I guess just for transportation. Okay. Got scared for a second. That's, I'm pretty sure, just for transportation reasons, because this hub can come out and go like this. Okay, that's how it goes, and we have hardware here that's just a temporary nut. Okay, before we start installing it, let's talk a little bit about it. I'm pretty sure many of you know about this setup, CV axle conversion with heavy-duty hub from GoodParts. So Richard Good developed this whole entire kit and he's custom making it for TR6. So we bought an entire CV conversion, so we have a CV joint here, and the hub. But you can also buy this, only the hub separately. Let me show you actually. This is the GoodParts website. So as you can see here, you can buy only the hub with provision for the original axle. So you can keep your sliding axle, the original one, and just at the U-joint, you can install this hub instead of the original one. Now, this is what we bought, CV joint conversion with a hub, and these are just different options here for TVR, for stag, etc. And you can also select what kind of a hardware you want on the hub for what kind of wheels, but also you can choose what flange to have on this side. You can have for example, for R200 differential or for the stock differential for TR6. You can also keep U-joints here, but heavy-duty ones, so these are different than the original ones. So you can have the hub with heavy-duty axle, but still with U-joints instead of CV. So this is what we have, TR4A to TR6 with stock differential. Here you can choose an option, factory hub mounting studs or GoodParts uprated studs or rear disc brake kit. And you can also choose the length of the studs, so 7/8 for factory wire wheels or 1 3/16 for factory steel wheels, or 1 3/8 or 1 9/16 for steel wheels with 3/8 spacers, etc., etc. So there's multiple options here that you can select. So yeah, they are pricey. This is the price for a pair in US dollars plus shipping, but it is worth it because the stock ones after 50 years are pretty fragile. So like we said, we have the CV conversion with the stock studs, and on this side we have the flange for stock differential. I guess that's how this gets mounted here and this gets mounted on the diff. As usual, Richard Good sends all the hardware with instructions, so let's read the instructions. Wow, that's a lot of instructions. Okay, I'm gonna save you the reading. I'm gonna go through them and then we're gonna start installing it together and I'm gonna show you the process. Alright, I read the first paragraph and I already don't like it. I'm stupid. I should have read those before I put the differential back, because look what it says here. The CV joint axles do not fit through the hole in the semi-trailing arm, so it will be necessary to install them from the inside. Due to limited space, it's difficult to maneuver the CV axle into place with the trailing arm and the differential installed, especially with the R200 or R200B differential. Well, we don't have that problem, but still, installation is easier with either the semi-trailing arms or the differential removed. These instructions include steps for the removal of either the differential or the trailing arms. What the heck? Why did I install the differential before I installed this? So it says installing CV joint axles with differential in place. That's what we're gonna follow. And here says option B, installing CV joint axles by removing differential. Well, that's what we're not gonna follow. So that cuts it in half. But let me see. Okay, I'm gonna read the rest and I'm gonna give you the highlights. Alright, so I went through the instructions, and first it explains how to remove the trailing arm, which is fine, but then there's an entire procedure of measuring the clearance between the CV joint and the trailing arm opening inside, and the tolerances are like a minimum of 50 thou or 1.25 millimeter clearance is recommended around the steel part of the CV joint. So that tells me that it is pretty tight down there, and in many cases you need to grind inside a little bit. So you know what, I think it is better if we take the trailing arm out and work on the bench here to test it the proper way. The good news is that we already have the GoodParts adjustable trailing arm brackets there that we can easily remove by just sliding the bolt out, and the bolts are put on from inside out, so it shouldn't be hard to remove them. So let's just take them out and measure, because this hole here apparently is pretty tight for these CV joints. So let's see how we're gonna remove that. So to remove the trailing arm, we don't need to disconnect the brake line, I mean introduce air in it. Of course we need to disconnect the e-brake from here, but the entire brake plate here with everything assembled on it, we can just detach it from here, loosen this nut that is holding the brake line to the trailing arm, and just hang this up here and then remove the trailing arm. And this way we don't need to bleed the brakes after. However, for this car in particular, I've already changed the hoses here, the brake hoses, and I haven't bled the brakes yet, so I have to bleed them anyways. So just to make it easier, I'm gonna remove the whole brake line, and we're gonna take the whole plate out so it is easier to work here. And for this reason, I'm gonna use this, which is the end of an old brake line that I welded here. So when we remove the brake line from here, we can cap it, and this way we're not gonna lose any brake fluid. I know people put plastic on top of the master cylinder reservoir, and then they put the cap, and that supposedly will stop it from leaking, but believe me, it still leaks. It's better if you just cap it. So first of all, let me detach the e-brake. So here somebody installed this aftermarket extension to the lever for the e-brake, so we can keep that, but we're gonna remove the original fork from here. Okay, this is detached, and now we have to reach inside there, and there's nut at the end up there. You see it up there? We have to undo this nut so we can loosen the cable. Get rid of the cable, and now this gives us the opportunity to lift the brake line up once we're done. Okay, so my original plan was to remove the brake line from the wheel cylinder and cap it here, but you know what? Maybe I can just cap it there. Like, yeah, because I removed this before and it's kind of loose. I don't want to break the connection at the wheel cylinder because we can just keep it there. Of course, we're gonna lose some brake fluid, but not a lot. And now we can get rid of this hose as well. Put it away. There's a clip here, this clip that holds the brake line to the trailing arm. So we have to unclip that. And then I have to remove the nuts from here, of course. And now we should be able to remove the whole brake plate together with the shoes and everything. There you go. So that's what I'm saying. If we haven't disconnected it from there, we could have just lifted it up and hung it somewhere here and try to work under there, but this is much easier, right? So next we just have to compress the spring a little bit so we can undo this nut, and then we can drop the whole trailing arm down, remove the spring and remove the two bolts, and we can take the trailing arm out. However, if you do this on the floor, and I've done it many times, it's super easy. You put your jack under the trailing arm, jack it up a little bit, you literally need an inch or so, and the weight of the car is more than enough for the spring to compress, and then you can undo the nut from here. You usually have the lever shock here, the Armstrong, right? But you still have the link here that you have to detach from the trailing arm. Here we have a tube shock conversion, but it is the same thing. Now, if I had supports in the front of the car, I could easily take my transmission jack and jack up the car. But I'm on a two-post lift here. I'm not gonna risk it. I'm not gonna do anything stupid like that. We don't wanna flip the car over. I don't have any support in the front. I need to buy some toe jack stands. I don't know what they're called, but here the car is really solid up there, but I'm not gonna risk it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my spring compressor that I use for my front suspension usually. So here it's tricky because we don't have much room on the top here, right? I can put the washer, which is pretty bent, but it's fine. And I can use this really thin nut, which is not great because we want as many threads as possible to hold. Come on. But this is gonna be fine. And then I can put washers underneath, and now I hope that this nut won't spin, because if it starts spinning, then we're gonna have to figure out some way to hold the rod from spinning. But no, actually this works. Okay, the shock is compressing. We're gonna compress it a significant amount just to make sure that it is compressed. Okay, now we can remove these nuts from here. They're locked together. Mount. Wow, this rubber has seen better days. And this one as well. Alright, so here you can see these adjustable trailing arm brackets, and these are also a GoodParts product that allows you to change the pivoting point, the height of the pivoting point here and here. The original brackets of the TR6 are not adjustable. There are 3 different brackets that came out of the factory. They have 1 notch, 2 notches or 3 notches on the side, and each one has different height of the hole for the bolt. So the only way to adjust the pivoting point of your trailing arm, both sides, is by replacing the 1 notch bracket with a 2 notch bracket or 3 notch bracket. So the early cars had one configuration of brackets inside and outside, and the later cars had a different. So that's why Richard Good came up with these brackets that are adjustable with this rod here. You see it goes through this block, and then the pivoting bolt goes through this block, so you can change the height, and that can change your camber. So I have a video about installing this on a TR6. I'm gonna put a link here. So I strongly recommend, if you're doing this job, if you're removing this arm anyways, buy these brackets because they are wonderful. So here we're not gonna touch these bolts, the vertical bolts, so we don't change the alignment. We're just gonna remove the center, the pivoting bolts, and we're gonna withdraw the trailing arm out. Luckily, whoever installed them put the bolts on the inside, because from the factory they put, I believe, this bolt from the outside, and then you have to remove the whole bracket. Here we can leave the brackets on the car and just remove the pivot. Okay, let's loosen this one as well. Okay, now I can put my jack underneath and withdraw these bolts. Okay. Okay. All right, so the first 7 instructions, or however many instructions, are talking about removing the trailing arm. Now we have it removed already, and then it says to inspect the 6 studs here to make sure that the threads are not stripped in the trailing arm, because that would be a problem and we have to deal with that separately. I have a video about that as well. But here we checked this before we removed the original hubs, and we know that they're good, so that's fine. Next, it says temporary to insert the new hub and check the fit. And for best fit, it says to have also the brake plate in place. Now we can remove the hub from here. So we can put it on here. Now we can put the 2 of the nuts here loosely, just to hold the hub in place. Now here I can't stress enough how important it is not to over torque this, because if you over torque them, you might strip the threads in the trailing arm. So the torque here is 14 foot-pounds. We're not even gonna go that far yet. We're gonna do that later. But one way of stripping this is by driving the hub in with the bolts. You don't do that. You need to make sure that the hub can go freely all the way in and the nuts are not driving it in. Okay. Okay, it's all the way in. Nothing is touching anywhere. Wow, this is super tight. Okay, so next instruction. Oh, the axles, in the instructions it says that the axles are handed, left and right. And there's absolutely no difference between them other than the way these clamps are clamped. So they're clamped in a way that the direction of the rotation is not gonna loosen them. So that's why we have left and right here. And I don't know where it was. Here, it says right side. So this is the wrong one that we have here. So I'm gonna unpack the other one. Okay, here we have the left side. Then it says to slide the axle inside the hub and check for clearance. I'm gonna put the temporary nut again, not the locking nut, and just gonna tighten it with fingers. And let's look on the other side now. I mean, how do you even see? Okay, so it says that a minimum of 50 thou or 1.25 millimeter clearance is recommended around the steel part of the CV joint. This is the area between 175 and 325 inches from the face of the trailing arm. So 1 3/4 to 3 1/4, 1 3/4 to 3 1/4. So this is the area which we have to check inside, but how do we even see that? I mean, I can see that it is clearing it. I can feel that nothing is dragging, but other than that, how do I see? Clearance in this area should be minimum 90 thousandths or 2.3 millimeters. So the internal diameter of the trailing arm in this area should be about 3.95 inches. Trailing arms that I have measured provide enough clearance except for the area towards the front of the car where the hoe is not quite fully round. Generally, the required grinding is limited to round out the flat area to the front and smoothing of the ribs. Just making sure the diameter of the hoe is sufficient is not enough because in rare cases the machine hub pilot is not aligned very well to the casting, so the CV joint will be closer to one side of the cast hoe. In this case, more grinding is required on one side of the trailing arm to compensate for the misalignment. Remove the axle and hub to do the grinding. Only grind inside the cast hoe in the trailing arm, never grind the machine hub pilot surface. So there's a machine surface here in this area for the hub. Of course, we're not gonna grind that, but I don't know what part they're talking about here, so let me remove it again. These are the ribs that they're talking about. And they're saying that towards the front of the car, so this is the front, the hole is not quite oval over there. So, but how do I even measure there? I can't. I mean, 90 thou. I'm gonna find something that is 90 thou thick and we will see if we can make a full circle. Okay, I found this TIG welder filler that is 91 thou. So we're gonna use that. I'm just gonna cut this end. Okay, let's put the axle back. Let's check the top now. Nope, I can't put it in. Not at all. I can feel when I go past the rubber, but that's how far I can go, and after that I can't move anymore. And that's right in the middle of this section that we said where we need to go through. It's interesting. No. I don't have 90 thou clearance. Dun, dun, dun. So that's gonna be fun. We have to grind inside there. But I can definitely feel that I'm going through the rubber here. I'm going past here, but maybe I'm stopping here. I don't know. You know what? I'm gonna sharpen this a little bit. I mean, not to a point, but just I'm gonna oval the end so it can go past this point. Maybe that's the problem. No. So if this area is bad, then what about the front? It's probably even worse. Yeah, I can feel it is getting really tight. It's not just the rubber, it's the metal that I'm touching. And this is aluminum rod, don't worry, I'm not gonna damage anything. Okay, well, then we're gonna have to grind. So this is the machine surface where the hub goes. That's what they're talking about, don't touch that. You see here where I was scratching it with the metal rod. So that's how far I could go, and you can see it's pretty consistent. So how deep is that from the face? That's 2.5, right? And here it was saying from 3.25 from all the way there, but I went past this point. 3.25 is here to 1.75. So from here to 3.25 to here in this area. So let me figure out a way to grind that. Okay, so I clamped it here in somewhat convenient position, and the only way I can think of is this way. Just take these two and go up and down and grind like this. So I'm gonna start by, where's my scratch mark? By making my circle. So 3¼ is here. So I'm gonna go at that depth and I'm gonna make a circle around. That's the bottom of my boundary, and then 1/75 is here. Okay, and now I can start digging. That actually works pretty well. So I'm gonna go around and do the same all over the place, and I'll bring you back. Okay, I went around once and removed whatever I could remove. You can see here the ribs, these are like pretty tall and they go through the entire hole all the way down. So I got rid of those here, but I want to go one more time. But how do I know where I've been already and where I haven't been? So I'm just gonna spray a little bit of black paint there, and then I'm gonna start grinding again until there's no more paint left in that area. Okay, I think that's good enough. So let's try again. Nope. Well, it looks like that didn't make any difference. So spray once again and grind once again. All right, finally. Like, this took a while, but now we can go past this point, you see? Not everywhere. You see, in this area I can go all the way till the end, but in this area, let me flip you on the other side. In this area I'm already almost at the end here, so I'm assuming that we're making the curve, and when it's time to come out it's getting tighter because it needs to go straight, make a curve, and then go straight again, right? So I think that's the problem there. Should I grind a little more? Yeah, I think I'm gonna grind a little bit more, but I don't want to make the wall too thin. Well, who knows how much I'm removing, like 5 tau or something, I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna grind a little bit more, but I'm gonna focus on the upper end now. All right, this is never-ending story. Like, still in some areas it's really bad, and now when I touch it, it's really grainy because of the disc that I'm using. So I found this. It's a sandpaper wheel, 80 grit, and that actually works pretty well, at least to smoothen the grooves at the end. So let's see. And I also expanded it pretty close to the surface here, because the rod goes pretty deep but still can't go all the way till the end, so expanded it a little bit higher. Yeah, this actually goes slower but has more torque, so I can press. I don't know what to say. Looks like it has more than enough room here, but I don't know. And this is pretty much how far this flange goes out. So, but with the hub it's different. Okay, let's try one more time. Okay, finally. So it's still a little bit tight in some areas, but it's going through all the way now. I didn't expect that it was gonna take that much of a grinding. Anyway, let's move on to the next step in the instructions. Wow, So next it says, when you are satisfied with the fit and the clearance around the CV joint and boot, unbolt and remove the axle and hub from the trailing arm. Okay, I've done that like hundreds times already. Well, don't get discouraged, because I'm gonna take you just for a second to the future to show you something. By the way, this is the other side, and it took very, very little grinding. With this, just got rid of the ribs and then smoothened it a little bit with this. And now look at that. I can just, look, this is all the way in there, and I can just move it around, absolutely no problem. So there's a big difference between the trailing arms somehow. Okay. So anyway, this one took 15 minutes, the other one took hours. So yeah, I think the left side was an exception. I'm pretty sure that most of the trailing arms are just like this one. Let's go back to the present now. Okay, so next we have to install this adapter plate on the diff flange using these bolts, which are 3/8-24 by 1 3/16 length, and we have to use the lock washers. The lock washers must be used to prevent the bolts from bottoming out. Bottoming out where? These are through holes, but anyway, medium strength thread locker is recommended, so we're going to put some thread locking. Torque spec, that's interesting, it says torque spec for these bolts is 34 foot-pounds, but it is difficult to get a torque wrench on them, so a good mechanics feel may have to be sufficient until your elbow clicks. Well, apparently your battery died and I didn't know, and I was talking to myself here. But anyways, it's all bolted in, and how I torque them is I use this handle that I cut off from my bead roller, and I use it for reasons like that. So I put a bolt and then I go and I torque like that. So that's exactly 34 foot-pounds. So next we can install the actual axle, again using thread lock and these bolts and nuts. That wasn't easy. So I was debating whether to put the bolts from this side or from the other side, and it's not in the instructions, so I decided to put them this way. But it turns out that, look, now the bolt, once the one up there is tight, I can't put this one in because the flange is hitting here. So now I have no choice but to put it this way and put the nut on this side, like this, one-handed again. Okay, that works. So that explains things. Okay, I'll put them all. These ones need to be torqued to 46 foot-pounds, and these we can actually torque. Here it was next to impossible. All right, it's time to install back the trailing arm now that everything is checked. Not everything is checked actually, there's a few more checks that we need to do, but they're done with the trailing arm installed, but without the spring. About the spring, actually, I just ordered new insulators for top and bottom of the spring. So we're not gonna assemble this permanently, we're gonna do it kind of like a finger tight everything, so we can undo it after and replace this. And I also ordered new rubber bushings for the shocks because these are pretty badly cracked, all of them. Look at this one, they're ready to go. So new ones are coming. I also ordered boots for the steering rack because those are ripped as well, and I didn't realize before, but I was waiting for more parts to order at the same time, and now that I have few different items, it is worth ordering them. Okay, so we have to slide this in place, obviously, and try to match the brackets there, like this. Okay. Okay, so for the next test that the instructions call for, we need to have the shock connected, or the shock link if we have the lever shocks, but not the spring. We don't need the spring yet, so I'm just gonna connect the shock. Now we can get rid of the transmission jack. Well, I love it when I can use it, but when I need to put it away, I hate it. Okay, so I'm just gonna tighten these bolts loosely because I want to be able to move the trailing arm up and down still, and if I tighten them too much, they're gonna just kind of lock it in place. Okay, now we can reinstall the brake plate. I'm actually gonna connect the fitting there before we have the spring and everything. It's gonna be much easier, so let me do that. It's gonna start leaking again, so we gotta be quick. Okay, just a little bit more. Okay, now we can hook this clip here to the trailing arm like this, and now we can clean up here with some brake clean, so if we have a leak we can easily detect it. I'm gonna hook up the e-brake later. So now we can install the hub permanently, actually. Now here, I don't understand this part. We have this notch here, which doesn't match anything here, like anything. I mean, does it go like this, like this, like this? There's 6 positions in which we can put it, but in none of these positions there's anything that's in the way. So I'm just gonna put it facing forward. Like, it can be straight up because the stud is stop. So we need to be either this way or this way. Actually, we're missing one stud here. It came off with the nut, so I'm gonna go remove the nut and put the stud in, because here we have new nuts that come with the kit. Okay, the stud is in. Again, let's do it this way. Now we also have to match the splines on the axle. There you go. Make sure that it is free to go all the way in before we torque the nuts to 14 foot-pounds. So, brand new nuts that come with the kit. Nylock. Like we said here, only 14 foot-pounds. Do more and you're gonna strip the threads on the trailing arm. And again, if you feel that you have any tension, don't try to overcome it. Don't try to force the hub in with the nuts. It needs to be able to go on its own. Okay, I'm not even torquing them yet. I'm just gonna drive them all in and then I'm gonna torque them. Okay, now let's torque them. That's it. You see how much it is? Literally one finger. Now we can push the axle out so we can start these threads, but it looks like we can't, so I think we're gonna have to pull it with the nut a little bit. Well, don't tell me that it is jammed now. It's not. There you go. Now it can come out. So let's put the washer. Again, this is the temporary nut. Now we're gonna do some testing here again. So finger tight until it bottoms out. Okay, so now the instructions say raise the trailing arm fully against the upper bump stop and prop it in place. The inner CV joint will be compressed at this point, but it should not be compressed against the end of its plunge range. To check how much plunge range is left, loosen the big nut and with a firm steady push move the outer CV joint and axle inward until the inner CV joint bottoms, and note how far it was able to move. There should be a minimum of 3/16 movement. Okay, so I can't measure how much that is, but definitely it moves in and out. So watch right here. There you go. And now I can pull it back out. Like it's opening now. So it moves, I think it moves about 3/8, but whatever, it's not at the end of its plunge range. And here we are all the way at the top. So we passed this test. Okay, now check the plunge reserve at the other end of travel. Snug up the washer and non-locking nut again. Lower the trailing arm onto the lower bump stop on shock lever with stock shocks or full extension of tube shocks. Since the suspension spring is not in place, the rubber bump stop and shock link bushings will not be compressed, so loosen the shock link nut to allow the trailing arm to drop another ½ inch to simulate compression of the rubber. This should be the limit of suspension drop during operation. Now back off the shock link nut further or remove it completely to see if the trailing arm is able to drop at least ½ inch further, indicating that the CV joint has sufficient plunge reserve. Okay, so we passed this test as well. Alright, so we passed both tests and we are ready to install the spring and finish assembling here. Now, like I said, I don't have the insulators for the spring, so we're gonna assemble it with the old ones, just finger tight. We're not gonna use the permanent nut here, we're gonna still use this one, but we're gonna assemble it first of all just so it is assembled and until the things come, and second to finish this video. So we're gonna put the old ones here, put the other one underneath. Now it says here that we need to remove the nut, this nut, and allow the axle to go in, which is gonna allow the trailing arm to drop down a little bit more so we can put the spring inside. Let's see. Yep, actually works. Even more. This actually doesn't. Okay, all the way. Okay, now jack it up. Now if you're on the floor you can jack it up with a jack. And I'm actually gonna try my transmission jack, not all the way, just to see if I can put a nut here, just even without the bushing or anything, just enough so I can keep it up. I'm watching. If the car makes any movements, I'll stop. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I actually have enough room here for the bushing even. Let's see. Not really. I'm not gonna put the bushings, but normally you would put your bushing and the washer and the nut. This nut gets tightened all the way. It has a shoulder that stops it. So that's what you have to do all the way. And then there's a second nut that you tighten and then you jam them together, and that's how they hold. I'm not gonna do that obviously yet. Then you bring the axle out again, and this time we can put the permanent nut, which comes with the kit. And to be honest, I don't know why they sent 4. We only need 2, don't we? So it says, after installing the suspension spring, you're ready to bolt the CV joint into the hub with the locking nut. GoodParts applies a very small amount of anti-seize to the threads inside the locking nut, but only at the 3 areas where the threads are crimped, to help prevent the crimps from gulling the threads of the CV joint. You see how the nut is crimped in 3 areas. Then it says slide the CV joint fully out through the hub and slide the washer over the threads. So we still have to use the big washer. And then it says apply high strength thread locker such as red Loctite to the threads within approximately ½ inch of the washer, then thread the locking nut on and then torque to 230 foot-pounds. Wow! The hub may be held from rotating by temporarily bolting up a wheel, lowering the car to the ground and choking the wheel. Be sure to install the brake drum before bolting up the wheel to prevent lug nuts from bottoming on the threads. If the nut needs to be removed later, apply anti-seize to the exposed threads before removing the nut. Before installing a new nut, thoroughly clean the threads, then install as described above. The factory wheel stud length for standard steel wheels is 1 3/16 measuring from the flange of the hub without the brake drum in place. Shorter studs are needed for wire wheels adapters. Longer studs may be necessary for some alloy wheels or if wheel spacers are used. Test fit your lug nuts by hand without the wheel in place to make sure they will thread on a little past where they will be positioned when the wheel is in place. Be sure to have the brake drum installed when you do the test. For the original steel wheels, the lug nuts must be able to thread on by hand to within 1/16 of the brake drum. If the nut does not thread in far enough by hand, tap the threads a little deeper in the nut with a 7/16 20 bottoming type tap. Do not install the wheel without first testing the lug nuts. Do not wrench the lug nut against a bottoming thread. Okay, now it goes all the way. So the threads just needed to be cleaned up, that's all. So I'm gonna do the same for the other three. Alright, and with that, the installation of one side is completed, and I'll do the same on the other side. I'm not going to hold you here. I already installed the e-brake cable, and what's left is only to replace the insulators on the spring and the rubber bushings on the shock, and then we can put the permanent nut here and torque it at 230 foot-pounds. We will see how that's going to work for us. So like I said in the beginning of the video, it is more complicated than what I thought it was. I thought it was gonna go the same way as the original ones go, through here, just put it in, bolt it there and forget about it. Well, turns out there's a lot more to it, but GoodParts send those instructions that are really good. Usually I don't like reading instructions, believe me, and the main reason for that is because they start with wear your goggles, wear your gloves, don't breathe the fumes, don't leak the battery, don't drink the coolant, and there's more instructions like this than actually telling you exactly what to do. Anyways, yeah, these instructions are really good, and they show you all the tips and tricks. I haven't read the second part, which is in case you want to install the hubs with the trailing arm in place but with the differential removed. Definitely one or the other needs to come out. So I'm assuming that would be really hard doing it from inside because you have to work on the car. Imagine grinding here as it is on the car and testing from behind to see whether you have the room. It would be really hard. I think this is the much easier option here. So yeah, I haven't forgotten that I have to tighten these nuts as well. I'm gonna tighten them now. And yeah, this side is ready. So I hope this gives you an idea of how things are done. Definitely, I'm sure the other side is gonna go much easier now that I did this side. I have already some experience. I have another set of these to install in the spring to another car. I'm sure that one is gonna go much faster. And especially I'm gonna have a video that I can watch and remember what tricks I used here and there. Anyway, if you're interested, www.goodparts.com. There's lots of other improvements for our TR6s there, and not only TR6s, but Stags and also TVRs and I don't know what else. But there's a lot of aftermarket heavy-duty parts available on the GoodParts website. So that's going to be everything for today. Stay tuned for the next video in which probably we're going to start finally assembling the engine. So thank you guys for watching, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and supporting me financially, because this is really, really helpful for me. I keep saying those words, but I really mean them. It's not something that I just learned by heart and I just repeat it at the end of each video. I really, really appreciate what you do for me, guys. There's very generous donations every once in a while. Many people become Patreons and pay small amount every month, like $5 or $10 every month, even though they don't buy anything with that. Like I say many times, everything on my channel is free. So if you support me financially, you're not buying anything. Everything is free. So the support is only if you feel like it, only if you feel like saying thank you, Elin, for your videos. Here's $5 a month to contribute to your videos. So thank you guys. Without your support, I'm not sure I'm gonna continue much longer with the YouTube videos, because there's not enough Triumph enthusiasts all over the world, I guess, to create enough audience for YouTube to shoot me up in the sky, you know. So the revenue from YouTube is nothing, but your financial support is what keeps me afloat. So thank you guys. I'm glad that I'm able to continue making these videos for you and for me. I love watching my old videos when I have to go and do a job that I haven't done in 2 years, and then when I go and watch it and I'm like, oh, that's a smart trick. Good thing I watched the video again, because I forgot about that. So I'm making them for you and for me. So anyways, I'm rambling. Thank you guys. There's links in the descriptions and explanation how you can support me if you wish to. So I'm not gonna talk about that anymore. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.